Gino's East is one of Chicago's most famous deep dish pizza places. They've been open since 1966. And there are still some people who don't realize Gino's East is here in LA now too. And let me tell you, it feels like you're in Chicago when you're in there. I know, I'm in there a lot. And during the week, Gino's has a happy hour from 3 to 6, Monday through Thursday. Get $5 drinks like Stella and Dark Horse Chardonnay. Also, $6 eats like spinach artichoke dip, garlic breadsticks, and a jumbo bowl of fries. There's so much great stuff on the menu. I always have a difficult time deciding what to order at Gino's. My go-to is probably the tavern pizza, cheese and sausage. You know what? Everything is my go-to there. Deep dish, the Italian beef, you name it. Everything on that menu is fantastic. Gino's East of Chicago and Los Angeles was named Best Pizza in the Southland by LA Times readers 2 years in a row. It's more than just a Chicago restaurant. It's one of the best restaurants in LA. Check out the friendly confines of Gino's East LA today on the corner of Coldwater Canyon and Riverside Drive, just off the 101. See you there.
Sit back and relax. It's time for peanuts, popcorn, and Cracker Jacks.
Hey, how's it going? I'm your host, Jeff Santo, and I'm here with my wife, Christy.
Hello, hello.
So, we got something to say today about a movie that just came out called The Bike Riders.
Yeah, we went to go see it.
We did.
I feel very strongly that they were giving us a nod to our little biker film.
Yeah, you say that, and I'm, maybe it does seem a little bit too much of a coincidence because we used the score from...
Well, we were in our score for our film, Dead in 5 Heartbeats, was inspired by Bill Justice's tune called Raunchy.
Right, back in the early 50s.
And that was the Moonlight Howlers is a rockabilly band in Arizona.
That we hired.
And they
to do a version.
The score.
Yeah, and that the Raunchy is an instrumental, and it's good. It worked great for our off-the-grid independent film with Sonny Barger, and it gave it some air. Like it's a fun tune, and they did put it on in the movie for about 30 seconds.
Say about like midway through the movie, there was like more in the beginning.
More in the beginning. It seemed like a nod because they didn't go with it after that. And I have to say this, and why you're saying this, and maybe I'm like, well, it can go either way. But I feel like, you're not going to do a movie like that without investigating Sonny Barger's life. You have to.
You have to.
He's the one story that the Hells Angels Club worldwide approved to tell. Okay, first of all, he is the Babe Ruth of the motorcycle culture. And the Hells Angels started the culture out here in California with, really the Booze Fighters started their club, but then the Hells Angels in 1947 or 48 in Berdoo, San Bernardino, had their first charter, and they had 4 of them, SoCal, Fresno, and San Francisco. And we told that story about Sonny, how he started his Hells Angel crew in Oakland by just finding a patch at a garage sale. And they made, not even knowing there was an existing club, and took a ride down to Southern California. I told that story, which is great. And then
in Hell's Angel, when you wrote that for Fox 2000.
For Fox 2000. And they took a part out of Sonny's story where Sonny actually watched The Wild One when it came out in the theater in the early 50s. I think it was 1953. Mm-hmm. And when that came out, he went to the theater. He would go to a lot of movies as a kid. And his mom left him at a young age, and his dad raised him, his sister, older sister. And the thing about that is that he got inspired by The Wild One to start maybe his own club, not knowing there was an existing Hells Angel club. And they used that part of it in this one, when really this story takes place in the late 60s. The guy's not going to be going into the theater in the late 60s watching The Wild One. It came out in 53. Be hard to find it on TV. And so they're taking pieces of his story.
Totally. I mean, it was in the 60s and 70s, right, this film?
Yeah.
And then they're playing 50s music.
It felt like a 50s kind of tone to it, yeah. which is okay because it gave it kind of, that nostalgic feel, but it's wrong, right? It's not really right on with it because in the 60s, you're listening to rock and roll, a whole bunch of different kind of tunes, man. Janis Joplin, Hendrix, a lot of stuff going on, especially the Vietnam time, which
But
changed.
sometimes back then, you did listen to older music. It wasn't like...
Right. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
I got you. But I'm talking with the biker culture that was kind of really in tune with what was going on in at those times, right?
Right.
So
Which is
especially
what they got to at the end.
yes. But a lot of stuff, and then they had a character called Funny Sonny
Oh,
that came from
awful.
California, which is ridiculous. I mean, and obviously I like the actor.
And Norman Reedus is a great
Reedus,
actor, but
yeah,
that was,
and he did a fine job playing whatever that was, but it was just kind of ridiculous. And if you're going to use Sonny's name coming from California, first of all, he didn't look like that. They had style in California. If you're going to send a guy from California, please let him have style because that's where it started. These guys, maybe the Midwest might not have the style that someone from California has, and they were into that, right? And looking good, looking the part, and they had respect for their patches and what they were wearing. And at the same time, I felt like if Sonny's going to come all the way, Funny Sonny from California, to meet these guys in Chicago, he's not coming by himself.
No.
Put it that way.
Yeah.
Not, and he's not hanging out and all of a sudden he's part of their club.
Else. They name him Hilljack Joe. I mean,
yeah, Hilljack Joe would have fit, believe me. But for things like that, and they didn't really get into the depth of what's behind these guys so much. They talked about they had jobs, but they didn't really get into. The only guy that really developed was
Michael Shannon's character, which was the only dialogue he had.
They didn't develop him though.
They didn't develop him, but they gave him a backstory. Then the other guy was the villain.
The villain, and they gave him a backstory. But it's just like, why? You got to give for your two leads, what's really going on and why this means so much and how the club formed and what it was about. You can't just say it was about family when they're just sitting in a bar, just feeling like they're good fellas.
And it was lacking a little story structure, but I have to say it was maybe avant-garde in the fact that it felt like a reenactment of a documentary.
Right.
So you're watching it's a soft movie. You come out there feeling like you learned lessons about this outlaw club or vandals club in Chicago.
Yeah. There was a couple of good points in there. Like I said, it's entertaining. It's, you got some great actors in it. So, but at the same time, you're really telling the story about that culture. It's Sonny's story.
Right. And it was definitely not about that culture.
No, it wasn't.
It had some elements of
that.
Of course.
Of course. It did. There is a part in there that feels like, okay, you see how these guys get together, but again, the depth was lacking. But, hey, it's just our opinion. And but you did say that was a nod, and maybe it was, and if it was, that's pretty cool.
How could it not be?
Well, hey, like I said, we don't know fully, so it's. But
what would be the odds?
Yeah, because if you're going to check out off the grid, kind of, we did it with Real Motorcycle Clubs with the main guy, Sonny Barger producing with us, and so yeah, they had to take a look at it, I would think, but who knows? Who knows? And the director, he's done some good movies like Mud, I thought was a really good movie.
Fantastic.
But this seemed a little bit more controlled by a studio side or something like that.
Yeah, it sounds like there was a lot of juggling going on.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes.
Like a little bit like the Jackie Robinson story where you're like, come on, Jackie, let's get to the real Jackie Robinson story. They kind of made that a Disney Jackie Robinson story.
Mm-hmm. So another announcement we have is that we have our T-shirts are in. So
yes.
Our Peanuts, Popcorn, and Cracker Jacks T-shirts are in. They're fun and congenial T-shirts that announce your comings and goings with the taglines from your favorite podcasts. So it says,
right.
Hey, how's it going on the front? And it says Toodaloo on the back. Okay?
Peanuts, Popcorn, and Cracker Jacks.
We have men's and women's tees. Go to santafilms.com.
Excellent. All right. And we're going to take 2 weeks off.
We are. We're doing a production, so we are very, very busy. So take your 4th of July holiday and enjoy, and then come back and listen to the podcast.
We'll have some good guests. We're taking 2 weeks off. We're doing a sizzle reel for a movie that we plan on making in the spring of 25. And so we're very excited about that. We got a great crew, and so we're going to be off doing that. But we'll be back after that with some great guests. I plan on getting Johnny Bench and some more people from the entertainment side that you're going to want to hear. And this week's episode is Kevin Chapman is my special guest. Call him Chappie. Really, I got together with Chappie out here in the early 2000s. He came out and we worked at a bar together, but you'll hear this. He really just jumped the chasm and
Great actor.
he did some great stuff and came out here at, after 40. And so you got to hear his story because he made a decision. He's so decisive. Like when he made this decision, when you hear about it, it's really about that. You got to have conviction in your decisions if you're going to jump a chasm like that and say, I'm going out here. And he had power behind it. And I can't wait for you to hear that because I believe in that you have to be decisive when you're making a move for your particular path in life, right? Whether it's when you're younger or when you're coming up on middle age, there's a whole bunch that you have to make. And any age, and his decision was pretty remarkable. How he did it and how he talks about it. Can't wait for you to hear that. And our Cracker Jack call is to
Vanna
Cantino, who was one of our babysitters growing up, more for Linda, but also me. I was like 9 and Ronnie was like 11, but we had a few babysitters that would be part of our family. I mean, they really weren't babysitting so much as just being part of the family. But to hear Vanna, I mean, it's classic. Yeah, we grew up with her, and she lived right across the street in our area of Valley Low, and can't wait for you to hear how I surprise her with the Cracker Jack call.
Yeah, and she makes these great bracelets and jewelry, and
she does.
You can follow her on Instagram.
What's the Instagram thing, Vanna? Anyway, we'll say it at the end.
Yeah, or on the email blast, there's a link.
There's a link. All right.
Click the photo.
Enjoy the show.
Enjoy.
This podcast is brought to you by Bernie's Tap and Grill. It's family owned and operated since 1954. Located across from Wrigley Field on Clark and Waveland. My dad hit a few home runs on the Waveland Avenue, and Bernie's was my dad's favorite place to go. It's got delicious food, 4 full-service bars, an awesome beer garden, a sidewalk patio cafe, and a cool upstairs area. It's the place I've always met my friends at before and after games. Go on by and tell Linda Dillman Jeff Santos sent you. Bernie's Tap and Grill, where you go when you go to Wrigley. My special guest is a testament to self-belief, to changing one's trajectory, that it's never too late to become what you believe you can be. He starred and co-starred in over 50 movies and television shows. And that all happened after the age of 40. Movies like Mystic River, Ladder 49, In Good Company, Coda. He played the Irish mob boss, Freddie Cork, in Showtime's original series Brotherhood, and portrayed Detective Fusco in the CBS hit series Person of Interest for 6 seasons. We were roommates in North Hollywood and worked at a bar called Shortstops near Chavez Ravine before he took off in his rocket ship. His story personally inspired me because I witnessed it. He's also a great guy and a great dad. Kevin Chapman, Chappie, so good to have you on the show, man.
Jeff, thanks for having me, buddy. Wow, I listened to that intro. I'm like, wow, who's that guy?
Come on, man. Right? Hell, what a journey, man, you have had, brother.
Very blessed. Very blessed.
Hey, man, the first question I want to ask you is this. It's like, where did you get that belief in yourself to not only change the direction in the second half of your life, but to jump into the great unknown, because that's what you did. Acting is that.
You know what, Jeff? I never really looked at it. I knew that I could always go backwards in life. And that's always been kind of my approach with everything I've done. I've never, I remember when I first told people I was going to move to Los Angeles to become an actor, they were like, "Are you out of your mind?" You're talking about an industry where, less than 5% makes more than $10,000 a year. But I never thought about that. I never thought about those, I just never thought about that. I felt like, I feel like, not to sound like a cliche, I feel like people have a path they're supposed to walk in life. And I just felt like this was mine. I didn't, it was something I never aspired to do. It was something that I found, and I was like, wow, I have some natural ability with this. And if I'm going to have any real success, then I have to work at the craft, and I have to hone a craft. And and that's what I did. I went out to Los Angeles, and I bounced at the House of Blues when I first got out there, and I studied acting during the day. And then I have a friend, Greg Dooley. He's a musician. Has a great band called Afghan Wigs. He is part owner of the Shortstop, and I was staying in the House of Blues, and he's like, Chappie, what are you doing out here? And I was like, I'm just giving it a go. And he said, well, you need to be my day bartender. And he brought me over to the Shortstop, and I became the day bartender. And I just kept showing up for life. They say success is where preparation meets opportunity,
Right.
and that's exactly what it was. I knew eventually I was going to get an opportunity. It was a matter of what I was going to do with it. And
How'd you
and
know
so
that though? How'd you know that you were going to get an
I
opportunity?
just did. I just knew that I've always been a personable guy. I just knew that
Mm.
I knew that something was going to come my way. I knew, I came out to Los Angeles with, a bunch of small. Um, well, I mean, the very first project I ever did was Monument Ave, and the way that whole thing came about, I was working for the mayor of Boston,
Right.
and I was doing logistics for the city of Boston. I was doing, street lights and potholes and that type of stuff. And I worked in a logistical capacity on behalf of the administration with a director by the name of Rob Spruill, who was doing this movie called Squeeze for Miramax. And I found the process of filmmaking fascinating. Um, as a novice, you see just the people on the screen, but there are 300 other people that make that happen for those people, those individuals on the screen.
Right.
And I watched this process happen, and I became intrigued with it. So there was an opportunity that opened up there was a film office for the city that was working in concert with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to try to bring in new film projects and stuff like that. Because when you bring a film project into a community, it really is it's an economic stimulus, because you
Yep.
have all these people, not only working, but people with, pockets full of per diem, and they're eating in your restaurants and they're staying in your hotels, and um, so I was working in the mayor's office, and this opportunity came up at the film office, and I went down to the mayor and I said, I'd like to have this job. I found that process. He said, what do you know about making films? I said, nothing, but no one will outwork me. And so anyway, long story short, he gave me the job.
Wow. Wait a
And
second. So the mayor of Boston, how'd you get that job? Let me just reverse a little bit there.
You know what, Jeff? I was 28. At 28 years old, I grew up in the inner city. It was during
Yep.
busing. My mother raised four of us by herself. I lived in public housing, the development, as they like to call it. But I can assure you, there was nothing developing there. Uh, and so I saw a lot of things, and I did a lot of things, and was with a lot of people I shouldn't have been with. And I'll just leave it at that.
Right.
And one
Right.
day at 28 years old, I said to myself, if I'm going to do anything with my life, uh, I'm gonna have to put down the drink, and that's what I did.
Wow.
So at 28 years old, I stopped drinking, and made some changes in my life. And what happened was the mayor at the time, well, excuse me, he wasn't the mayor, he was a city councilor at the time, was running for mayor, and he was against an opponent who was from my district, where I lived. And I of course knew a lot of people because I was always a personable guy, and was always involved with charity events, and fundraisers, and just, I mean, I was a good guy at heart. I just had some poor direction, and
Right.
so somebody came to me and they said, hey, this guy's running for mayor of Boston, and you're a guy that knows a lot of people, and they said, come work with us, and we won't forget you. And that's what happened. The mayor, my guy won, and next thing you know, I was the mayor's liaison to that community.
Wow. Now, what neighborhood in Boston did you grow up in?
In Dorchester.
Okay.
Lived in Dorchester, and then I lived in South Boston for about 15 years as well. But Dorchester is home. That's where I grew up.
And where was your dad in the picture growing up?
My dad really wasn't in the picture. That's kind of how we ended up in the projects. It's kind of a unique story how we ended up in living in Boston. Um, my mom was a chubby little French girl from Biddeford, Maine, and she was an only child. My grandfather was 25 years senior to my grandmother. He became stricken with cancer, and my grandmother couldn't take care of my mother and my grandfather, so she gave my mothers to the nuns up in Biddeford, Maine, to raise. My mom was very a great student. She went to Radcliffe, got a degree in language, and then her dad died of cancer, and she felt compelled to do something in the medical field, so she went to nursing school, became a registered nurse. While she was at nursing school, she meets this guy. He's a master sergeant in the army. My dad fought in the Second World War, fought in Korea. Um, he was he was the first guy that ever paid attention to her. She dated him 6 weeks and married him. It was her first boyfriend she'd ever had. She'd never even kissed a guy. And she married him, gets pregnant on a honeymoon. My dad goes off to combat. This is now during the Korean War. She gets pregnant with my older sister Gail, and she goes back to Biddeford, Maine, and has my sister while my dad is deployed. My dad comes back from his deployment and says, come down to Louisiana and meet the rest of my family. And it was at that moment she realized she just married into kind of a, I hate to call them hillbillies, but that's kind of what they were.
Right, right, right.
Like my mom used to tell me stories like my Uncle Bill, when refrigerators first came out that made ice cubes, he thought it was broken. He wanted to send it back to Rose Sears and Roebuck because he sat up all night with the door open, waiting to watch it make ice cubes. And my mother had to convince him that, Bill, you got to close the door. And so my father went from the CC camps during the Depression, lied about his age. He was 15 and a half, and he was at Pearl Harbor. Um,
Oh,
and fought in Pearl Harbor, and then he fought in the Korean War. Um, and every Veterans Day, I post a picture of my dad. It says, "This is Master Sergeant Euland Chapman." He was a sucky dad, but he was one hell of a soldier.
wow.
I think the soldier stole the dad from him. You know,
Right, right.
that's what my old man did. He drank. He was hard. He made the great Santini look like child's play. He was
That's tough to
he was a
do,
tough
man.
son of a bitch.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you can
So
tell,
anyway,
man.
we
Go
went
ahead.
on. My mother went
Go ahead.
on, and she had three more kids with this. I hate to call him a lunatic, but he kind of was. And then one night in the middle of the night, she took us four kids in an old Rambler, and we were heading back to Biddeford, Maine. And then as we were coming through Boston, she saw in the Boston Record American that they were hiring nurses at the Boston City Hospital, and the four of us kids waited in the car while she went in and got the job.
Wow.
Back then, they would give you a certificate, and that certificate was a certificate of employment. So they gave her the certificate of employment, and then we went back into that same Record American. That was the newspaper back then, and found an apartment. It wasn't an apartment, actually. It was just an attic with a galley kitchen and a bathroom, and we lived in that until we get in the Mission Hill projects. It was me and my brother in one room, my two sisters in the other, my mother on the couch when she wasn't working. Um,
Man, that's
so
amazing.
it was a little, it was a little bit. So that's really how I ended up here in Boston. It's like I don't, it was a direct result of my dad's alcoholism and PTSD, which is what we
Right.
now identify it as.
Didn't know about it back then, so they did.
No, you didn't know. It was just
Yeah,
suck it up, buttercup, and keep it
yeah,
moving.
right.
Yeah,
Were you the youngest?
I'm the youngest. Yeah, youngest of
Okay.
four. Yeah.
So how far from the oldest are you?
There's a 7 year gap between me
Okay.
and my oldest sister. There's a 10 year gap between her and.
Okay. Wow. And how often was your dad in the picture? Was he gone right then?
Well, my mom is this little French woman, raised in Biddeford, Maine by nuns, right? So divorce was not an option, right? Because that's against the Catholic Church, right?
Right.
So she would let him back in, and then and my mother for some reason was the only person that could really talk to my dad. Like my dad could be in a moment of psychosis with rage, and my mother would say to him, Hewlin, and as soon as she said Hewlin, and he heard her voice, he would instantly calm down. It was really kind of weird like that. Um, but yeah, so my mother would tell him, "Look, Hewlin, you got to go," and she would send him off, and he'd go back to Louisiana, and then he'd want to come back, and then he'd come back, and then so it was like it was kind of that yin and yang my entire childhood. He was
Man,
in the house, he wasn't in the house, he was in the
yeah,
house, he wasn't in the house. Um, my dad had a hard time with the Northeast. I mean, like I said, he was raised in Louisiana, and the city life was a little bit too much for him, I think.
right.
I used to play hockey as a kid growing up. My dad used to love come watch me play hockey because he had never seen hockey until he came and watched me play.
Right, right.
So yeah, it was like little things like that, but um, yeah. So he was in and out of our life for my entire childhood.
That you a lot like my father, man. You're a city guy, city boy. My dad was too, and his dad left him at 8.
Yeah,
So it's your moms are your angels, man.
yeah, oh yeah,
And
yeah,
sisters. His sister too, and that's where you get that respect because you do for your mom and your sisters.
yeah.
It's a big thing, and you have the toughness of your dad, obviously, but in a different way, right? You know.
Yeah, it's funny. As a kid growing up, I never liked violence because I know what real violence looked like. He was in the next room, you know, and I mean that sincerely. Like
Wow.
my dad was a deadly guy. I mean, he was in, everyone puts their dads on pedestals, and
Yeah.
that. But my dad was he knew how to kill people. That's what he was good at. Like he was like that was his thing. You know what I mean? So it wasn't it could go too far at any given moment. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because he fought in the Second World War, he fought in Korea. My dad was a master sergeant of an infantry unit. He saw combat. He wasn't like he was in an office somewhere. He knew what it looked like to put a bullet in a man, or to
Yeah.
stab him with a knife, or whatever it is that he had. So he was a pretty he was like you could only bump it so far, then you would be like, okay, maybe I better go in the other room.
Right.
Because
Right.
yeah, he was a pretty serious guy. And he medicated, self-medicated with a pint of early times in his back pocket, and a six-pack of Schlitz. That was his
Yeah.
medication.
Wow. It's strange because you're a serious guy too, but you joke a lot, right? You can see you got that humor, man, and you're charismatic. It's just great to be around you. We have a lot of fun together, right? But you got that serious side, and that outlook probably came where you can see like, hey, man, this is one life. Go for it. Was it that kind of thing with you? Like, hey, just go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I just knew Jeff. I knew that as good as it was going to get for me was working at City Hall, and I always knew that I could go back to that. Like I
Hmm.
knew once I had I was pretty good at that job. I was pretty good at putting out fires for the mayor. So I always knew there would be a job for me somewhere with someone, but I also knew that had a ceiling. I also knew that was only going to get to a certain point, and it was never going to get any better than that. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Um, and it could have afforded me a nice life. It just I just felt like there was more out there for me than that.
You got a
And
taste. You got a taste because you were around a lot of characters growing up, right? So you got a taste of what you're watching on the movies too, in a way. You know what I mean?
yeah, I mean, well,
Yeah.
it's I just finished Bookie for HBO
Right.
Max, Chuck Lorre show with starring Sebastian Maniscalco. Very funny show, and I was there, and Chuck Lorre's like, "Do you know anything about Bookie?" And I was like, "Don't know anything about Bookie." I said, "I personally know 35 bookies right now. I could call." you know, but
Right.
that's from growing up in the inner city. Like
Yeah.
the inner city, and it's like we don't go for slow walks in the park, but you know what I mean? Like, I know what they do. They know who I am. And it's like,
Right.
it's like, hey, how you doing? And you keep it moving, you know?
Oh, that's class. Now, when you came out to LA, like when you made that transition, did you know it was coming, or did you say one day it just hit you like I'm going?
So you know what happened? This is what happened. I'm working at the film office, right? And
Mhm.
I'm working logistical capacity on behalf of the administration, right? And Ted Demme and Dennis Leary are doing a movie called Monument Ave. And Ted Demme kept looking at me kind of funny, and he goes, "Can you act?" And I said, "I think I'm intelligent enough to." You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So he gives me a script. He says, "Look at the character Mickey Pat," and I read the script. And he says, "All right, let's have lunch tomorrow." We have lunch, and I meet with him and Dennis, and they say, "Who's Mickey Pat?" And I tell them who I thought he was. And they go, "Can you get 3 weeks off from work? We want you to play him." So I was like, "Yeah, all right." So I had 5 weeks vacation because by this time I was, at the city probably like 8 or 9 years. So I took my 3 weeks vacation and I went and did this movie. So I'm like, wow, I can do this. So then I started auditioning. I auditioned for Cider House Rules. I got a part in that. I auditioned for In the Bedroom. I had to drive all the way up to I drove all the way up into Bar Harbor, Maine to audition for that.
Is that
And
Todd Fields? Is that
that was Todd Fields,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
He just come off of Eyes Wide
yeah.
Shut, and it was with Tom Cruise's cousin. There was the lead, and so I had a little scene in that with Tom Williams.
And these are all films coming into Boston, right? Out of the film
No,
office.
that was in Maine. That shot in Maine.
Okay.
Cider House Rules shot out in Western Mass.
All right.
The only movie I did in Boston was the first one was
Monument Ave.
Ave.
Now,
And
but how did you know the auditions were around? How did you get connected to like
so
finding out?
I started looking around. I started scouring the trades, the like
Okay.
backstage. The Mass Film Office had a website where they would announce auditions, and then I started looking around and started
Right.
who's doing what. You know what I mean? So then I did that. I did like 3 or 4 movies where I had like
Mhm.
little parts, and then there was in Boston everything is a conspiracy theory. It's like a guy could win $1 million, and it's like, well, his sister works with his sister works at the lottery. You know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
no, the guy bought a ticket and won.
Right.
you know,
Right.
but it's like that conspiracy theory. So
Right.
I get a call from this reporter from the Boston Herald, Steve Morantz, I think his name was. And he says, "Don't you find it to be a conflict of interest that you're in these movies and you are working at the film office for the city?" And I said, "Well, no." I said, "Any of the movies I've done are outside the city." And he's like, "Well, I find it to be a conflict of interest." Well, then, the
Mm.
conversation went so far, then the projects in me came out.
Right.
I gave him a few choice words. The next day, I'm in the front page of the Boston Herald. Front
Really?
page, acting official with a 2-page pullout, and I still have it. And I have a Foot Locker with a bunch of memorabilia in there, and I have the article from the Boston Herald in there. And so the mayor says to me, he goes, "You can't, no more acting." And
Wow,
I said,
man.
"What do you mean no more acting?" He said, "Either you're going to act or you're going to work for me." And I said, "Well, it was nice working for you."
That quick.
Yeah, and he was like, he goes, he was like kind of caught off guard. And I said, "Mayor," I said, "this guy questioned my integrity."
Yeah.
I said, "So now I have to go show him otherwise."
Holy cow, man.
That's what I did. No, and I moved. I was literally the conversation I had with the mayor on Tuesday, and I left my job on Friday was my last day, and I moved Saturday morning.
That's strong, man.
And
That is that.
I used to call the Herald once in a while and go, "Hey, how's that dying business you're in?" Because I got another TV show.
Right? But seriously, like he's got to pick you out. Really? Come on, man. I mean,
Whatever, you know what I mean? Like,
right? That's
what it is, and it's something I've learned. I learned early on in politics, they take shots at me because they're trying to get to the boss. You know what
Yep.
I mean?
Yep. Yep.
So if they can take me down and they can show a kink in my character, then it questions his
Right.
character, a
Yeah.
hiring. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Makes sense. Yeah. Totally.
So I was like, it's okay, and so he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to go to California." And he goes, "When?" And I said, "Saturday." And I went and got a U-Haul Friday night, and I put everything I owned, including my motorcycle, and drove to California. And
That's
it was funny because like the first like 3 days I was there, right? I hadn't found an apartment yet, and I was sleeping, I think, on CB's couch. Chris Brinker, who was a
right. Yeah.
friend of ours, and I was sleeping on CB's couch, and I had everything I owned in the back of this U-Haul truck, and I kept thinking, like, what if my truck gets stolen? Everything I own is in it. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
man. Right.
Then finally, I got the apartment at the Biltmore,
Yep.
where you and I were roomies at the
Yeah.
Biltmore, and
Right.
yeah, that was my first roots in California.
God, man, I didn't know that was so quick a quick decision like that for you, man.
Oh yeah, like that. Like conversation on Tuesday, quit on Friday, move Saturday morning.
That's amazing, man. That's how you move, though, man. Now looking back at it, it all makes sense. It really does. It really does. Just from your upbringing to where, hey, you're going to challenge me. Okay, here we go. I'm good at this.
But you know yourself, like growing up in the inner city, the only thing you have really is your word. You know what I mean? In your integrity. And if somebody's, at this point, I had done some work on myself. You know what I mean? I had, I was abstinent from alcohol now, probably, 6, 7 years. You know what I mean? I had
Yeah.
I've been like doing some work on myself. You know what I mean? So to have someone come in and say that I cheated
Yep.
and that was question my integrity, it was like, really?
Yep.
Like you don't even know me and you're gonna call me a cheater? You know?
I get
Uh
it, man. I get it.
that didn't sit
100%.
well with me, and I was like, okay. And well
That's just so great, though, that you could cut ties like that. I know that you had did you have a serious relationship at the
I
time?
did with
Yeah.
my wife now to this
Yeah.
day. We did the long distance thing for a year.
What
And
was
then
her thought on that when you made that decision? What was her thought like?
she was like, I mean, really, there was really no conversation. I was so driven because, like I said, this guy had questioned my integrity,
Yeah. Yeah.
and this reporter had in questioned my integrity. And that's what really upset me more than anything. I mean, I
Right.
was a good guy. I was doing good things in the community. I was getting I got an award from I got a prestigious award from the University of Massachusetts for my work in the community. And I
Yep.
and they have somebody turn around and say like I'm a liar and I'm a cheat. Really really got my Irish up.
Yeah. I'd say, hey, man,
Yeah.
when you say that, I love that you say I'm a good guy. I always believe in that, man. Not enough guys say that. Like, I believe the same stuff too. Like, when you know you're a good guy, you can take on a lot of stuff, right?
Right.
Because it's like, even if you do something that's a little wrong, your intentions are good, right? It's on the side of good. But it
Yeah, I
may
mean,
be a little aggressive and it may be a
yeah.
wrong approach. But at the end of the day, you're defending something that you believe in, that is who you are.
Yeah, I mean, I've made decisions that looked back on in time and been like, that was the wrong
Of
decision.
course. Right.
But it's also, it's also, the ability to say I'm sorry and the ability to say I was wrong too. That comes with being a good guy as well. To
Yep.
say, hey, you know what?
Yep.
I'm sorry I did this. I didn't mean that. It was, at the time, it's what I thought. And, I mean, there's no dress rehearsals, man. We get one life, and what we choose to do with it is what we choose to do with it. And things worked out for me, and I'm very blessed. Like I tell people all the time, God's given me everything in life I need. I'm just working on a couple of wants, you know.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right. But
I've been very blessed, and like I say, success is where preparation meets opportunity. I prepared for that moment, and when the opportunity came, I seized it.
And you had enough behind you at that moment. You had enough experience, right, to say, hey, I know how this game works, Hollywood, because you had a taste, right?
I think honestly, Jeff, I think the fact that I was naive to the whole thing
Mm-hmm.
was really an attribute for me. You know what I mean? Because I didn't I never did the research. I never, I was just like, this is what I'm gonna do.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
right.
Hail Hail Auctions is Chicago's premier partner for rocking your fundraising goals. If your organization is looking for rockstar solutions to raise big money to support your amazing mission, you need Hail Hail Auctions. Whether it's providing a superstar MC or a killer licensed auctioneer to help plan your amazing event, they strategize everything from one-of-a-kind auction items to big-time sponsorship acquisitions. In Chicago, or anywhere in the U.S., if you want to maximize your fundraising, go to hailhailauctions.com and be sure to say Santos sent you for a complimentary consultation.
Yeah, Santos sent you. Ron Jr. or myself, Jeff. We've known Chris for quite some time now, and we vouch for him 100%. Chris is a go-get-it-done type of guy, and he's fun too. So you'll have a good time raising money for worthy causes. Go get it done with Chris, now.
The consultation is 100% free when you mention the podcast. So what are you waiting for? Hail Hail Auctions is where money raised is love saved.
You got that right.
And before you came, you talked about Chris Brinker, who was the producer of Boondock Saints, the Boondock Saints. And you did some help on that right before you left. Was that the last?
So what happened was, so Boondock Saints was supposed to shoot in Boston, and a friend of mine, location guy who I became friendly with, Charlie Harrington, he's like the location guy of locations. I mean, this guy is one of those guys. He's done every big movie. He did he did The Doors with Oliver Stone. He did Good Will Hunting. He did Amistad just on and on and on. You look up Charlie's IMDb and it's like one big movie after another, And he's got a great way about him. Like Charlie's one of those guys you can say, Charlie, I want to shoot in the Vatican. And he's like, well, I'll see what I can do. He'd never say yeah or no. He'd just go, I'll see what I can do. And then you show up and the Pope's holding a C-stand. You know what I mean? Like, he's just that guy, you know? So Charlie was working on, I forget what movie it was at the time. He goes, hey, we got these guys that want me to do locations on this movie. He goes, but I can't take them scouting today. They're only in Boston for the one day. He's like, could you help me out and take them scouting? So I was like, yeah, sure. So I jump in the van with Troy Duffy and Chris Brinker and Lloyd Segan, and at the time the movie was at Miramax, and they had it was like Brad Pitt and I think Matt Damon was supposed to play the two brothers, and then there was talk of Donnie and Mark Wahlberg, and it was kind of an ongoing conversation. But I ended up taking these guys around the city because I know the city pretty well and scouting various locations and stuff that they were looking for. And that's how Chris Brinker and I became friends. Him and I were sitting in the back of the van, and we just hit it off. It was just like an instant conversation. We just had this instant connection, and then when I moved out to LA, he became, a very close friend of mine, and we ended up doing some business together as well. And yeah, he was a good dude. I think Chris all the time. He was, unfortunately we lost him.
Yeah.
Him and I made a movie together. It was originally called Whiskey Bay, and we had to change it to Bad Country because of the alphabet on the VOD, and Chris had an aortic aneurysm on the set of that movie, and we lost him.
Way too soon, man. Young.
Yeah, he was a good dude. He was Chris was one of these guys. In my experiences with him, the least you were going to be treated, the worst you were going to be treated was fair. And that was always my experience with him. Like, we never did contracts. It was always a handshake.
Yeah.
Because he had my back and I had his, and he was a good dude. And so anyway, him and I became friends on Boondock, and then the relationship at Miramax dissolved for whatever reason. Then Norman Reedus and Sean Patrick came in, and they moved the film to Toronto. And Troy Duffy called me up and he was like, "Hey, would you play this character in the movie?" And so I did. I played one of Yakovetta's guys in the movie.
Yeah.
And it was, it was really more about hanging out with the boys than anything. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, that was kind of the group that yourself, Troy, and CB, and that was the kind of the group that I hung out with.
Yep, and I met you just about that time you came, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That was
'cause that's when I met Skelty, and then got part of that community, and we all became friends, and a lot of us lived in that little Biltmore, area there in North Hollywood.
It's like everybody kept passing the apartment off. I think I passed it off to you. I think you passed it off to Tyson. No, to Troy, I think, right?
Yeah, to Troy. Yeah,
Tyson, his brother Tyson. Yeah.
Oh man, and Skelty had the one down by the pool. I mean, that little pool that we never used because I don't even know if you could swim in that thing. But
that's so true.
man. And then when we worked at the shortstop, man, that's when you got the audition for Mystic River, which was your calling card. That was the big deal.
And even that was kind of funny. I read that in the Boston Herald. In the Boston Herald, I saw that Clint Eastwood was doing a movie in Boston. I didn't know what it was about. I just knew that Clint Eastwood was doing a movie in Boston, and I knew Sean Penn was in it. And when I got into acting, I just wanted to meet Sean Penn, never thinking that I would one day work on 2 movies, and hang out with him socially and spend the weekend at his house. And,
But I remember when you got that, man, I was like, you had the audition, right? And
no, what happened was I read in the Boston Herald that Clint Eastwood's doing a movie in Boston. And so I when I moved to LA, as I said, I had these little clips. I had, maybe 4 or 5 clips from movies that I had done, these kind of one scenes. I became a friend of mine, Dave McLaughlin, lived out in Los Angeles. And he had become friends with a neighbor by the name of Sherry Cohen, who was she was a manager at the time. She's now an agent, I think, at Buchwald. And we would just hang out socially. I had no representation. We would just kind of hang out. And then Sherry said to me one day, and she's like, "Do you have an agent?" And I said, "No." I said, "I'm kind of looking for one." And always kind of, I knew that she was a manager, and I didn't want to feel, because we were hanging out socially, I didn't want her to feel pressured, like I was that guy who was like trying to latch on and get something from her, So she says, "Well, come and meet with my management where she worked." And I went and I met with Chris Wright, I think the guy's name was, that she worked for, and he was like, he wasn't interested. He was like, "I'm not interested." And I was like, "Okay." So then Sherry said to me, she goes, "You know what? I have a friend, Sue Wall, who I think you'd be good with." So I went and meet Sue Wall. At the time, it was called Gold, Marshak, and Likey. It's called Talent Works right now, is the name of the agency. And I went in and I walked in and I sat down and I talked about making money. I didn't talk about the art. I didn't talk about being famous. I talked about making money. And I remember Daryl Marshak was one of the partners at the time. And Daryl Marshak said, "In all my years in this business," he said, "this is the first guy that's ever walked in here and talked about business." And he goes, "I say we sign him right now." So they signed me. And so I have this agent now. I'm like I say, I'm scouring the earth looking for work. I see that Clint Eastwood is doing a movie in Boston. I call Sue up and I say, "Hey, Clint Eastwood's doing a movie for Warner Brothers in Boston. Can you get me in for an audition?" She said they've already seen everyone that they're going to see in Los Angeles. I said, "Well, where are they now?" She said, "They're in New York." I said, "Oh, get me a meeting in New York." And she's like, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, so I went down to LAX, bought myself a ticket. I bought the book Mystic River prior to going to the airport at a Barnes and Noble, a little paperback. I read the book from LA to New York, got off in New York. I walked in Phyllis Huffman's office, and she says, "Do you know anything about the story?" And I said, "Do I know anything about the story?" And I went right through the book. Boom, 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 boom. This happened here. In the book, the murder takes place and the body's found at the old Neponset Drive-In. Well, it was at the Neponset Drive-In where I saw all of Clint Eastwood's movies as a kid. The shooting took place on Sydney Street. I lived at 10 Sydney Street. I mean, I just went right through the book, and she was like, I didn't even audition. She picked up the phone, she called Clint. She goes, "You got to meet this guy," and that's how I got the job. So I get the call from my agent saying, "Hey, Clint Eastwood wants to hire you for this guy." And so I said that, and as I became familiar with Clint,
Wait,
and
hold on a sec. Hold on a sec. So when did you first meet Clint?
I
Right
met
after.
him. I met him when I showed up in Boston to do the movie. I
Oh,
never
so
met
he hires you without having you come in and.
Yeah, no, I never. First of all, he only hires people from tape. He doesn't. He was a guy
Okay.
that never hired people in person auditions, because he said he never wanted an actor. He said, "I know what it's like to be an actor." He goes, "I'm an actor myself." He said, "And I never wanted someone to feel like because they met me, they got the job, or to feel intimidated by my presence so that they
Wow.
couldn't give a good performance." So
Wow.
he only, he only hired actors off of tape. He never would meet anyone. The only time he would meet, like he would meet Sean, Tim Robbins, his main
Yeah, known as
actors,
main guys. Yeah.
but everyone else he would just hire from tape because he
So
never wanted.
he had a tape of yours.
No, he had a tape. Phyllis was recording the conversation, but when she called him right then and there, she's like, "You got to meet this guy," and she sent the tape off to him. And a week later, I got the call that I got the job. So I had to fly back to Boston, and it was funny. I walked in.
I remember when you had to go
Sean Penn
fly. I
had,
remember that. I
yeah,
remember that, man. Yeah.
Sean Penn wanted Everlast and a couple other people to play the role that I played. He kind of copped to it as we became friendly, and but it was funny when I walked in. It was, I walked in the room. We were at the Ritz Carlton on Avery Street. Clint was at the head of the table, and it was Fish and Kevin Bacon were at the top, and then it was Sean, and Sean saved the seat next to him for me because because we were so close, we worked so closely together in the film. He couldn't wait to get in my pocket, and then Laura Lenny and Marcia Gay Harden and Tim was
Wow.
across the table, and
What a lineup.
so I walk in and I sit down, and Clint goes, "Well, you must be Chappie." And I said, and he said, "What do you think?" And I go, "Come on, it's a home game, you know." Uh, Everyone started laughing, and then I asked Clint. I asked, as time went on, I asked him. I said, "What was the quality that you saw in me that you felt I was right for your movie?" And he said, "You anchored my movie." He said, "You have the ability to make all this other stuff a reality." He said, "Because you're the real thing. You're a real guy from Boston." He goes, "So you what you did is you anchor the movie for me,
Mhm.
you know." And I learned that, and I was like, "Wow, that's pretty insightful."
Very insightful and intense to you, man. That's just
For me, I get excited. I mean, you get excited with working with different actors and stuff, but I get excited about working with directors. I love working with um, great directors. Like I've been very fortunate.
Mhm.
I worked with Eastwood twice. I worked with Tony Scott. I worked with Alejandro Rutu. I worked with Lasse Holstrom. I worked with Walter Hill, DJ Caruso, Jay Russell, the Whites brothers. I mean, I've worked with some, phenomenal. Todd
Yeah.
Field was another guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Todd Field would only give you your sides. He wouldn't give you the whole script. He would
Mm.
only give you the pages. And I asked him about that. I said, why do you do that? And he learned that from Stanley Kubrick when he did Eyes Wide Shut.
I never knew
He
that,
said,
man.
Kubrick only gives you your scenes. He doesn't give you the entire script. He
And
only
the reason for that, I got to think a little bit about that. Is that so that you're trying to make up your own story and
well,
figure
yeah, so that you play the moments truthful,
right?
and you don't forecast what's going to happen on the
Yeah.
next page or what is about to happen, down the line. You know, you play those moments as they're
Interesting,
written,
man.
as truthful as possible, and then let the storyteller tell the story.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a matter of choice. You know what I mean?
What'd you
you
think
know,
of it when you got that? What'd you think about? Did it work for you?
with Todd, yeah, it did. I mean, it did.
Right.
It did.
Yeah. Does that help you with your style sometimes when you're learning your lines? Do you do that yourself or no?
Well, I mean, when it depends on what you're doing. It depends if you're doing a film or a
Yeah.
TV series or,
Right.
but getting back to Eastwood with the anchoring of the film, that I honestly believe that was my success with Person of Interest. I did
Mm.
Person of Interest with Jonathan Nolan.
Yep.
Um, Jim Caviezel's character was this black ops guy who had this, you didn't know if it was CIA or exactly what his background was, but you knew he was deadly and you knew he was dangerous. Michael Emerson was this billionaire. You knew he made his money in the tech world, but you really weren't quite sure how he made it. And then you look at Fusco and you go, well, this guy looks and sounds like a New York cop. You know what I mean? So
Right.
what he does is he makes all that other stuff believable. Because if you believe the fact that Fusco is a New York cop, then you believe that this guy is an actual billionaire and this guy is actual
Yeah.
a black ops,
Yep.
type individual. So that was something I learned from Eastwood on Mystic River. And as you know, you may have heard, Eastwood he only does like 2 takes. It's like he's not a guy who if you look at any of his movies that he's directed, they're all told in the master.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's not a lot of coverage. There's not a lot of tight close-ups. He may occasionally push in for a tight close-up, but for the most part, everything's breathing. It's all out in the master. He doesn't get too caught up he doesn't get too caught up in lighting.
Hmm.
If you watch, I remember I was watching Outlaw Josie Wales, and Josie Wales gives like a monologue in a doorway. And from the waist up, Clint is in complete darkness, and
Hmm.
I had discussions with him about that too. I'm like, why is it other directors are always so concerned with lighting and making sure that you got a little twinkle in your eye, and they put that little pin light so
Hmm.
your eyes, you get that little twinkle in your eyes, and he said that's how life is viewed. He goes, as I'm talking to you right now, you've got a shadow across your face. He goes,
Yep.
that's real
Yep.
life,
Yeah. Bring more of the
So
reality to it.
really kind of
Yeah.
cool to see, the different. And then like I worked with Alejandro on 21 grams, and he's a guy that likes to
Yeah. Which
cover.
which on that too is great because then you bring in a little bit of fantasy, but you bring the audience into your world that you're making
Right?
up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
it's just a
which
style. You know
yeah,
what I
it's a
mean? But
style, totally.
Alejandro's like, he's, I mean, a brilliant director, of course. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
like,
Oh yeah.
he's like pushing in and getting,
Yeah.
these close-ups that, probably not even going to use, but he's like, I'd rather be looking at it instead of looking for it, you know?
And you can
Uh,
tell with Clint. I mean, that's his acting career, right? Nothing really fancy, right? Just go at
no,
it. Yeah. So now out of Mystic River, Chappie, that's your like first real like big film where they brought
yeah,
you in to hold down the fort, being from Boston and everything.
yeah.
What experience did you come out of that with? Did you now know like I'm in this for life now? I got it.
You know something? I really didn't. I remember I used to go out with Lawrence Fishburne. Lawrence Fishburne and I would go out to lunch, and we'd get on like Newbury Street or something in the sunny days. And no, Mystic River was probably one of the greatest hangs I've ever had in my entire
Has
life
to be right.
because we worked an 8-hour day, right? Like Clint's not one of these guys who's like, hour 13, 14, 15. 8 hours, go home, go be with your family. You know, he would, you'd get picked up. So if your call was at 7 o'clock, the car would pick you up at 6:30. 7 o'clock when you arrived, the car would drop you off on the set. They wouldn't, there's no going to my trailer and you got out of the car and you got out of the set and Clint was standing there and he'd go, well, good morning, Chappie. You know, and he would block the scene and he would go, all right, I'm gonna go over here, 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 okay, okay. And he'd cut you loose,
Go to makeup.
go back to your trailer, put your wardrobe on, They knock on your door, ask you what you want for breakfast. You give them, what you want, a cup of coffee, whatever. No sooner you got your wardrobe on, you went right to hair and makeup. As they're putting your hair and makeup on, you're eating your breakfast as best you can, right? By 7:30, he's calling action. It was like there's no
No time to get nervous for you, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, there's no like, have a coffee and wait for the clothes to come, and you know what I mean? Like everything runs like an oiled machine. It's like boom, 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 boom.
Let me
Like,
ask you this. Let me ask you this. Now, that first scene, you go boom, you're like, you don't have much time to think, right? Which is kind of good. You get to the plate, you don't want to think when a fastball's coming down
right,
the pipe,
yeah,
but you got to
yeah.
be ready for it, right? You got to be prepared. Were you nervous? Tell me with a feeling that was going through you when you first went in there.
I really wasn't nervous because I knew that I was the only guy on the set that was from Boston. And that's what Sean Penn said to me the first night I met him. He goes, any one of these actors that don't get in your pocket is a fool. He goes, because we're a bunch of actors from California trying to be guys from Boston. He goes, and you're the real deal.
Wow.
He goes, so
That
he
gave
goes,
you a lot
anyone
of
who
confidence.
doesn't hang with and Sean and Sean and I were inseparable in that movie. It's like every
Yeah.
night. It would like we'd call rap and he'd go, all right, what do you want to do now? And it would like with dinner, we would go down play pool. We would, every night it was
Wow, man.
something. And then we would and the night always ended back at Sean's suite, and it would be, you know, like Sean, Tim, Fish, myself, and a couple of like people that Sean met along the way. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah.
And we would go
Yeah,
back
right.
to that. We would go back, and he would tell amazing stories. He would tell amazing stories. I mean, like, I've met a lot of people in my life. He's probably one of the most interesting,
Yeah.
not only interesting, but courageous, kind,
Yeah.
and I don't think he even went to college. I don't think he went to college. And
Mhm.
he could not only sustain a conversation with heads of state, he could lead the conversation.
Yeah. Right.
You know what I mean? Like he's just a remarkable, remarkable human being. Like he's just, and people always say to me, they go, what's Sean Penn like? I'm like, he's one of the most fascinating guys I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
You know
Those
what I
guys
mean?
at that level, I think the same way about Eddie Vedder. I got a friendship with
Yeah.
Eddie Vedder, and same thing, man. These guys are just so elevated, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's all natural, but it's
Yeah.
all those years of what they dealt with, right? I mean,
Right.
look at where Penn started. How many years
Yeah.
he had his dad, a director, right? Arthur Penn, Bonnie
His
and
dad
Clyde.
was blacklist.
Yeah,
His dad was
right?
on blacklist
Yeah,
for communism.
right.
Yeah.
I know. And you just look
Yeah.
at that and you go and you can just see they're just, I mean, the experience, the wealth of knowledge and just good decisions, bad decisions, the wisdom
Yeah.
that they carry around. It's so elevated. It's cool to be in those rooms, man. And that room,
Yeah.
that's welcome to the major leagues, Kevin
And,
Chapman,
and,
going into that room.
and what I love about Sean is he's very honorable. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
He's a very
yeah, oh yeah,
honorable man. Like
right,
he's not like if he tells you he's going to do something, he'll do it. He's
yeah,
not one of these guys that be like, yeah, he doesn't. There's not a lot of Hollywood shuffle with him. You know
yeah,
what I mean? If he's not interested in doing something, he'll just tell you right up front, I don't want to do it.
right. Well, there you
And,
go, man. That's the
but
way
if he
life should
tells
be.
you he's going to do it, he's
Yeah,
going to do it. You know
right.
what I mean?
Exactly, man.
And I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with Sean, and like I say, every night. And then that's how I ended up working with Alejandro. So when we were making Mystic River, Alejandro was coming and meeting with Sean and working with him on the script on 21 grams. And so I knew Alejandro, like, hanging out, you know, we would go somewhere, we'd go to, Felt or one of the places and shoot pool or something. And then Sean and Alejandro would kind of duck off into a corner somewhere and, do
Yeah.
what they have to do. And the rest of us would play pool. And, so yeah, that's how I ended up, working on 21 grams. Sean's assistant called me up and he goes, hey, Shawnee wants you to come play his college roommate in 21 grams. So I was like, all right. He goes, go to the airport. There's a ticket waiting for you at LAX. So I had to fly to Memphis. And We shared a hotel room. Sean had a suite, so he was in one room, I was in the other. And I went down, just did this one scene on 21 grams with him.
Yeah, you were on the rocket ship by then, man. Yeah, you were gone, right? You
I just loved that. I just loved hanging out with him. I loved, I just loved spending time with him because he was just a good dude, and he could have been, he could have been a guy I grew up with. You know what I mean? Like he was so normal, so down to earth.
Right.
It was funny when so Sean's assistant at the time was Tyrell Ventura, Jesse Ventura's son. So so the Iraqi war just broke out, and so we would go to dinner on Friday night. We would go to dinner pretty much every night after work. We would go to dinner. Sean would get a room. He would reserve one of the small banquet rooms at the hotel, and we would go up there on our own and do a table read of the script, and just find more beats in it because like you got to be prepared. So every night he'd be like, "Okay," we'd wrap. Sean would go, "All right, I got food coming in." He would have dinner delivered during the week, and we would go up and just keep banging the script till about 7 o'clock, and then we would go out and have a good time, and then get up in the morning and do it all over again. But we would go to these dinners, and Tyrell would call his father, who was the governor of Minnesota at the time, and he would put Jesse on speakerphone and just throw him in the middle of the table, and we would have conversations with him about the Iraqi war and stuff,
Wow. Yeah. Wow, man. Great stuff. Now,
it was pretty cool.
From there, you do Brotherhood.
I did
Again,
Ladder 49 from there.
From there you did, okay.
Ladder 49 with Joaquin Phoenix and John Travolta,
Right.
which was a phenomenal experience.
Yeah. But the reason I get to Brotherhood, because again, you're on a show for like 3 years, and that part fit you too well, right? Yeah,
Freddie Corp was a great character. It was a great character to play because it was it showed the duality of that world. You see like a lot of shows, and I think Sopranos did it as well with James Gandolfini's character. You see the mundane side of being a gangster as well. This
a lot
guy's
of downtime.
This guy's a gangster, but he's still got to take his kid to Little League, and he's still got to, go to his daughter's recital, and he's got to, pay the paper boy, and you know what I mean, like the mundane side of life. So that was, what I loved about playing Freddie Cork is that you saw that, you saw him, going out for pizza with his kids in the car, and he's,
right,
going to collect money on the way, and
right.
It was a lot of fun,
Yeah, man. But you grew up near those guys, the Whitey Bulger area and all that in Boston. So you're around a lot of tough guys, man. So you get it. You get those characters, and that's just a great theme to absorb, and then take that now in the world that you have honed your craft, dude. It's been great to see your rise, man, and maintain that too. And also talk about, man, you went off with Aerosmith and played a part with them for a while.
Yeah, I did that. That was just kind of a whim. So in 2010, Steven falls off the stage. It's not, I'm not speaking out of turn. It was all public knowledge. Steven Tyler falls off the stage in Deadwood, South Dakota. I've known those guys for years from Boston, because of his mishap in Deadwood, South Dakota. The bond company would not bond the tour unless he had somebody with him who was, kind of his assistant and beacon of sobriety, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And so we were talking about it, and I said to him, I said, that really sucks that you have to be accountable to some person you don't even know to continue to do what you've done for the last 40 years and bring the world joy, And I said, now you've got to be accountable to some person, some rando you don't even, you've never even met before, and they're going to determine whether or not you can continue to keep doing what it is that you do, and bring joy to the world, So he said to me, he goes, "Will you do it?" And I was like, "I don't know. Let me talk to my wife." So I asked my wife, and she was like, "Go." So I did. I went off.
How long?
We started in Caracas, Venezuela. We went to Caracas. We went to Bogota, Colombia, Lima, Peru, Santiago, Chile, San Jose, Costa Rica, Sao Paulo, Porto Alegre in Brazil, and then went to Europe and did all of Europe. So, yeah, we were out there a while.
You got your travel in there, man. Boy, you got to see the
Yeah,
world
and
there.
you know what?
Yeah.
It sounds so sexy and it sounds so glamorous, but it's funny. I worked with I went on tour with Ringo Starr as well. Just last year before, I just did like a little 6 week, a 5 week run with Ringo Starr. And it's funny, Ringo says it best. He goes, "They don't pay me to perform; they pay me for the travel." Because it sounds sexy, right? But you're going like you're in a different country, you're in a different time zone, you're in a
Yeah.
different hotel. It's like no sooner you get in the hotel and unpack your things, it's time to pack them up and move on to the next country, or the next city, or the
Right.
next whatever it is.
What makes you do that though, man? What is it? Something like you just want to absorb some different stuff? I mean, it's got to help you in your acting for sure, just to
Oh,
observe.
I'm always about life experiences. Like I'm
Yeah,
always about experiences. Like I
absolutely.
mean, like how many people can say in the world that they toured with Aerosmith or
Right.
toured with Ringo Starr? It's
I
like
love it, man.
I'm like for me, it's about the experience.
Yeah,
I don't have any ego. Acting is what I do. It's not who I am. It's not. It's
yeah,
not. I don't. I don't. I do it because I love the work. I love the creative side of it. I love getting lost in a character. I love trying
yeah.
to take something from a page and bring it to the screen and making it interesting that somebody wants to tune in next week, or somebody wants to watch it again, or somebody wants to tell a friend. Like that's
Right,
you know
right.
better than that. That's a blessing to be able to do that and call that making a living.
Yeah,
So I'm always up for the experience and um,
yeah. Because
going.
things come out of that, man. It's just, I mean,
Yeah,
just seeing all the new different
right. Well,
cities.
perfect. I mean, you talk about Eddie Vedder, and that's how what we talked about that, like how when you and I were living together,
Right.
working on the movie about your dad, The Soul Cub, which was a great film.
But you
I,
came out to Warner Brothers and saw when we were
oh,
editing it a
great.
rough, really version, and you gave me some
Yeah,
copies. Like, dude, this is wow.
yeah.
I remember you getting
And I
choked up
met
on.
Eddie Vedder in Boston. I was doing um, press for Loud 49, and so I'm doing press for Loud 49. We fly. They fly me to Baltimore, Maryland. We do a big thing there with Cal Ripken. We all jump on Travolta's jet and we go up to New York. We do a thing there with the New York Fire Department, and then from there we get back on Travolta's jet and we go to Boston. So we get there. It's like middle of the night. It's late. It's like 11:30, whatever. I drop my bags. I go downstairs. I go downstairs and get a soda in the lounge. And I walk in the lounge and I turn around. And I hear Chappie, and I look, and it's Tim Robbins, right? And he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm doing press for this movie I just did because I just did Ladder 49 right after Mr. River." And so he's like, "Come on, join us." So I sit down with Tim and a bunch of dudes. I don't know who they are, and we're just like chatting and we're just cutting it up and we're not really talking about anything. And I'm there for maybe about an hour, and there's this dude to the left of me, and him and I were talking about our kids because he had a daughter the same age as mine. And we were talking to me. He was telling me a story about how he got upset when he felt like one of the other kids were looking at his daughter in the bikini, but like she's like 5 at the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And it was like it was funny, and we would like talk
yeah.
because I had a daughter the same age, and we were kind of laughing. I remember I told him a story about I remember in preschool a kid got my daughter to show him his underwear. You know what I mean? And I'm like, my wife's like, "What are you gonna do? Go beat up the kid's father?" You know what I mean? I'm like, but like if your first kid, your daughter, you're like, so him and I kind of connected on that level, and we were laughing and cutting it
Right.
up. And so I said to him, I said to Tim, I go, Tim, what are you doing in town? And he goes, I'm playing with my band. He has a band called Blob Roberts with
Hmm.
him and his brother. It's
Right.
like kind of not a political band, but
Yeah.
Tim's very politically active and
Yeah.
a phenomenal and just a great human being. Love the guy. I haven't seen him in years, but just a great human being. And he goes, why don't you come to the show? I'm like, all right, cool. He goes, I'll leave you some tickets. I'm like, great. So this guy I'm talking to here, and I go, so you in Tim's band? He goes, no, I got my own band. And I go, no kidding. What's the name of it? And he goes, Pearl Jam. So, and I was like, oh, he's like, and because like the Eddie Vedder I knew had like the big long beard and when they first come out, when they first dropped that
Long
record,
hair, yeah.
long hair, and he's kind of clean cut now and clean shaven. And so anyway, I told him about this old Cub. I was like,
Wow.
I said, because we were talking about baseball, and he's like, and I said, Jeff is, Ron's son, and Jeff and I live together, and I said he made this incredible movie about his dad, and I told him all about the movie, and he's like, oh, I got to see that, and then
That's
he's
amazing, man. I never knew that until you told me that. That's
yeah,
amazing because I saw him at a fantasy camp, and sometime soon after that,
yeah,
that my dad was at. I just went to see my dad for a day there, and
yeah,
Eddie was at I think his first camp there, and he came up to me and said, "I loved your documentary." I'm like, "Holy cow!"
yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
know that you were the one that
Yeah,
turned him on to it.
yeah, I
That
was
was
telling him, I
cool,
was like,
man.
you got to see this because he was,
Yeah.
you could see the passion he had for the Cubs and for
Oh
Chicago.
my God, yeah, yeah.
I always thought because you always heard Seattle grunge, so I always thought that they were
Yeah.
this Seattle band, and I guess they did, break out of Seattle or
Well, they
whatever.
did, but he
But
grew
he's
up
a
in
Chicago
Chicago.
guy through and
Yeah,
through,
grew
though,
up in Chicago, taking
Yeah,
doing taking score when he go to the Cub game back then. So yeah, he
yeah.
was
And
huge, authentic Cub fan,
it's
basically.
funny, yeah. So they left me tickets. They left me tickets to the show. Eddie was letting Tim's band open for him at the Boston
Wow,
Garden, and they left me 2 tickets, and I ended up going.
that's
I got to
awesome.
see Pearl Jam and
That's a
hang
great story.
backstage, and the whole deal. It was pretty cool,
That's a great story, man.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to ask you here, man. This is awesome. Does your son or daughter aspire to follow your footsteps?
No, not really. My kids, it's funny. My kids, my daughter works for U.S. Congressman Lynch in the Ninth
So
Congressional.
somewhat going into
Yeah, right. Yeah.
somewhat.
She went in Dad's footsteps into the political side of things.
Right.
And my son is a lacrosse player at Babson College, which is a business school here in Massachusetts. And it's funny. My kids we would go to like Steven Tyler's house when he was doing like American Idol, and like we would go there, and my kids would wear their pajamas, and Steven would be in like leopard pajamas with like his hair up in a bun, and him and the kids would curl up on the couch and watch American Idol together, and and they always address him Mr. Tyler. It's like,
Wow.
my kids, like, they don't, they've met famous people, but they always address them properly. And they've
So they
never,
have their own roads, like
yeah, they just don't have their own roads. It's like, it's
yeah.
funny, like, even when, like, I'm out, when I'm out with my family, the only rule I have is like, people come up to me and like, can I take a picture? And I'm like, I'm happy to take a picture, but my family's not taking it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Right.
my wife or my kids aren't taking the picture. If you got someone that wants to take the picture, I'd be happy to take a picture with you. And but
Right.
don't hand the camera to my wife or my kids. You know
Right.
what I mean? So it's funny when I'd be out with my kids. People would, we'd be at the Garden or Bruins game or something, and they'd nudge me like that. This guy wants a picture. But that's about the extent of they.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool.
Really.
So, and your son was a hockey player. Now he's lacrosse. They both did
Played
both.
hockey. He went to Boston
Yeah.
College High School, played hockey there, and then lacrosse, and then.
Wow, man. Good athlete.
Point said, yeah, he's a
Yeah.
good student and a good kid, and that's
Yep.
the first and foremost in our house. Is you be a good person, and
Yeah, no doubt, man. Is hockey your sport? Is that your sport?
hockey. Yeah, I loved hockey. Yeah,
Okay.
that's my real passion in life is
Yeah.
hockey.
So let me ask you this. I was going to throw a baseball. What's your favorite baseball movie? What's your favorite sports movie?
My favorite sports movie. I mean, Slapshot.
Oh, that's classic, man.
Who owns the Chiefs?
Good call, man. Good
That's the
call.
best movie in the world.
And I'm gonna throw. I know you like baseball. I mean, you
I
follow it.
do.
You know
Yeah,
the
yeah.
game. Give me a baseball movie.
I mean, Bull Durham.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You know, I mean, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
That's a good story
any
behind
Ron Shelton movie is a good sports movie. You know what I
it,
mean?
right? Yeah.
I like Tin Cup. You know, like,
Yeah. And his
I
book, dude, he came out with a book, The Church of Baseball, The Making of Bull Durham, which is a classic, man. Just the hells that he went through, but at the same time, why he made it, because he felt like sports movies didn't show really that inspiring side off the field. You know, the characters, and yeah, he did a great job with it, which built that town back up. You know, that town survived because of him doing that movie.
I love movies like Any Given Sunday. I thought was phenomenal.
Yeah.
All Stone. Like I love movies that give you a little peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, no doubt, man.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you get movies like John Hancock's film The Blind Side, or
The Rookie he did too. He did The Rookie also.
did The Rookie,
Yeah.
but I never really felt like you got a peek behind the curtain like you do
Yeah, right.
with Bull Durham, or like Any Given Sunday,
Yeah,
or
of course.
Slap Shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
You always see the glitz and the glamour, and then we're flying on the jet, and we got the nice locker room, and the nice this and the nice that. You don't see the guy who's got to get on the bus for 7 hours and then get off and play a doubleheader. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there you go, man. Hey, man, this was awesome, Chappie. Thanks so much for being on, brother. Just a great story. What's next for you, man?
I just finished a movie called Shattered Ice.
Called what? Shattered Ice?
Yeah, Shattered Ice. It's a movie about mental health. It's based off a story that happened here in Massachusetts, where there was a member of a high school hockey team that committed suicide, and so that's what this little movie is based on, Shattered Ice. And we finished it. We're kind of cutting it up now. I'm actually going to get ready to watch a director's cut as soon as I get done here with you. And then I'm also doing Bookie with Sebastian Maniscalco.
Right. Awesome.
HBO Max. They just finished season 2, and I'm in episodes 7 and 8, and there's talk of it being more than that if it goes to season 3. So we'll see. Let's pray for season 3.
Perfect, man. Hey, you got it, dude. I mean, I commend you on everything you've done, man. You just went straight at it. And I see now just the pieces that you put together for me, man, because I witnessed the times that you were jumping, and then your ship took off. But just congratulations, pal, on everything you've done, man. All right.
Always good to see you, my friend.
Always, buddy. I'll see you when you're back, and we'll get a cigar, man.
You're
all right, love you, brother.
All right, love you too, man. Thank you.
All right, see you, pal. Thanks, bud. Bye.
This Santo moment is brought to you by Onesti Entertainment. On August 10th, 2011, Ron Santo was honored with a statue outside Wrigley Field. The 7-foot bronze statue depicts his signature play on the third base line, with his name below and 2 inscriptions. One side reads his career stats, and the other side reads, "Empathetic voice of the fans on WGN radio for 21 seasons. Tireless fighter, survivor, and champion for those who lived with diabetes. Helped raise more than $60 million for juvenile diabetes research, through which his legacy lives on." That Santoid was brought to you by Onesti Entertainment.
Cracker Jack.
This call
Hello?
is being recorded.
Hannah,
Hi.
you're my Cracker Jack. Call.
Oh, okay. I'm in the car. Oh my God.
Wait, can you talk, or you want me to call you back?
Can you call me back? I'll text you when I get home.
I'll call you. How long? Give me a time period.
Or 40 minutes.
All right, I'll call you in 40 minutes.
This call
Just
is being
a second.
recorded.
Vana Contino.
Oh my God. Okay. Hi.
I always remember you as Vana Contino. I know you have another name now. And
Like a couple more.
I didn't. Yes, you have. But you will always be Vana Contino to me, and I'm probably going to always be that young kid, right?
that
Yes.
you babysit.
That I refereed.
That you refereed. Okay. Now, I've been meaning to call you for a while, and here it is. We are talking. You have to tell me a little bit of your memories back then. When did you start babysitting for us?
1971. 71. Linda was
70.
just out of diapers.
Wow. Okay. Yeah,
I think
1971.
she was. Yeah, I think she was 3.
Well, she was 2. Yeah, probably 2.
Yeah.
Going to be 2. She's born in 69. So, yeah.
Right.
When did you meet the family? What year?
in 71. So I was babysitting Jimmy Rosenberger.
You were what?
And I was babysitting Jimmy Rosenberger because he lived in the
Really?
same. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And your mother heard of me from Joan, his mother.
Right.
And I was walking down the street one day in front of your house, and your mother, in her slippers and her robe, opened the door and she goes, "Hey, are you Vanna?" I'm like, "Yes." I was like, "Well, this is Ron Sano's house." Like, oh my God, and I went up and talked to her, and she asked if I would be, if I would help out, and the rest was history for me.
Wow. Now, let me ask you this. Jimmy Rosenberger, I had no idea you were the babysitter for all of us. Now, Jimmy, what was he like when you started babysitting him?
Very meek and mild.
Meek and mild. Okay,
Yes.
And then what were me and Ronnie like?
Oh my goodness. You were little devils in disguise.
Okay. What
Can
does
I
that
tell
mean?
you? You were awesome. I mean, you guys all you welcomed me with open arms, and we got along right then and there. And it was, I was part of the family as soon as I walked in the door.
And how old were you? May I ask?
Was I 15? I think I had my driver's permit, maybe 15 at that time.
15 years old.
Yeah.
You were a freshman in high school. Holy cow.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, you were.
I was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because yes, I was. Well, wait a minute. When did I start?
My mom left us with a freshman in high school. So
Yes.
think about that. I mean, okay, I guess, and we weren't like young. I mean, Ronnie was 10 and I was 8.
Right. You were not much, I wasn't
11,
much
9,
older
10,
than
8,
you guys. Right.
Well, I mean, we were we were little rascals then. There's no doubt about it.
I was like a big sister, basically.
Yeah,
I think.
basically. Yeah, I was never intimidated by you, tell you that. So
No. And you treated me like a big sister, both of you. I swear.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. What was Ronnie like, though? I mean, like at that age, what was he like? Was he easier than me?
God, you were two different. God, you were you were different. I think I had more interactions with you than I did with Ronnie, because Ronnie and I were closer in age.
Ah, yeah. So you really weren't babysitting him. It was me and Linda, basically.
I think it was more Linda. Yeah. Yeah. And
yeah, I mean, you're watching, keeping an eye on us. When I'm saying that, like at come nighttime or something, if they were out or whatever, I could see that.
Right. And
I mean, you're not going to leave a 9-year-old with a 2-year-old.
No. Right.
Yeah.
And I remember just, I would spend the night. I just took care of all 3 of you. I drove you guys everywhere when I got my license.
Yes, that's what I remember the most. You did drive us a lot of places, and that was
right.
Cool. And and you were a hippie, basically, right? Kind of.
Yeah, I was.
You were. Yeah.
I knew everybody. I loved to I would meet anybody and be friends with anybody. I mean, I was an only child, so, the neighborhood was my playground, basically. And growing up in Valley Low was so different than anywhere else.
Right. It was different. We had the houses on the lake and then the condominiums, across the street. but it was,
Right.
yeah, we were all kind of together, and now you were an attractive young freshman. So
Yes,
you
I
had a
was.
lot of guys around you. I remember a lot of the long hairs were around you. I remember that.
Yes, and your father. So when the boys came calling, okay, your dad would make me sit at the top of the stairs, and he would have to answer the door.
And what? And make sure they were all right for you.
Right, and then each time, no, there were like two or whatever. Not like there were tons of guys that came to get me. They would never call me again because they were so intimidated by your dad.
Well, you're a freshman. You're our babysitter, and yeah, he's going to protect you. There's no doubt. And
No,
your parents were a little older than, right? You were. How old were your parents when they had you?
My parents? Oh, my dad. Well, my dad was 48 when I was born, and my mom was 36. So.
Yes, so you had older parents. My parents were young. Yeah.
Right.
So
right.
they could relate to you more, I would bet. Right.
Right. And then when my parents went to Florida, halfway through my senior year, your mother came to my mother and said, "You are not taking her out of her high school. You're not letting her not graduate with her friends. She's living with us." So I lived with you. Yeah, I lived with you guys for 6 months, from December to July in 1975 when I graduated high school.
Yeah, I think I kind of remember that. Where did you stay? In Linda's room? Because Linda slept with my parents?
Correct.
Yeah, that's right. I do kind of remember that, but you were always at our house, so I didn't really it wasn't like a big deal. You know what I mean?
No, I was there every day, almost every day.
Wow. Yeah. And what about any encounters talk about like Glenn? You got to know Glenn well, Joe Pepitone and those guys.
So one night, we went to Maddie's Wayside Inn and we went to dinner. This is like a typical thing. And then I took you guys home, and then your parents went out. And it was Maddie, your dad, and Becker and your parents. They went out and they came home late. I'm sleeping on the couch, and Glenn comes up to me and he grabs me and he takes me to the picture window or the sliding glass door out to the lake or whatever. And he said, "We're being invaded by aliens." And I'm like, "What?" Well, the Aurora Borealis was out there.
Yeah.
It was, and then he came inside and he's calling everybody he knew, and I forgot. Was it Irv Kupcinet? That was the guy in Chicago. I don't remember.
The reporter?
Yeah. Well, he had a talk show or something.
Okay.
I don't know. He called somebody. He says, I got to call. And he did, and then he took me outside. He says, look. It was just the funniest thing. And yeah, they were like family to me too.
Oh, that's funny. So he woke you up on the Aurora Borealis, whatever you call that. Yeah.
Yeah. It was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you go to any games at all?
Yeah, a few. Well, yeah, I did. I sat there behind the dugout with you guys. Like the whole neighborhood was there. Like Terry Barnett and you and Ronnie and Linda, and I don't remember a couple of the other guys.
Terry who? Terry? You mean Terry O'Brien?
Terry O'Brien. Who'd I say?
You said
Never
Terry
mind.
Barnett.
Terry O'Brien.
Oh
no, Terry O'Brien. Oops.
Terry Barnett was one of the long hairs that you had come over to the house, probably.
Yeah. No, he never came.
One of many.
No, shush. That's not fair. So, anyway, yeah.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. They were chasing you. You could tell. Yeah.
I know.
I remember. I remember, Vanna. Hey, nothing. That's to be proud of. I mean, come on. You know.
Well, yeah.
So, in a way.
But you guys used to climb on top of the dugout to get over. I mean, I had no control over you guys when we were at a baseball game. None.
Well, that was our playground. No, you would never have control of us at the ballpark. Once we go there, we're on our own. So
I'm lost. I got
Yeah.
Linda, and then you guys went and did
Yeah,
the
you're
thing.
Linda in the seat, but Ronnie and I was that was a different story.
Right. And then I remember the drives back home when the Cubs lost.
Yeah.
So, that was fun.
The drive back home when the Cubs lost, oh my God, it was awful.
We had to be quiet.
Right? I mean, come on. We tried to get a ride back by someone else. But but when they won, boy, he was something else. It was like, it was one big
it was awesome.
celebration. It was good.
It really was.
When I think about my dad and back then, I really do at this age where I'm at, and obviously you're a little older than me, well, by a few years. But, I just think of like his personality was just so like, when I remember as a kid, just always just full of life. You know what I mean? And
he was so caring and so giving. And
yeah.
For me, we'd sit in front of the fireplace and we'd talk. And he'd ask me all these questions, and we just had really nice talks a lot, And your mother was she's like a second mother to me. She's mom. She's my second mom, and she taught me so much growing up, and even taking care and cleaning the house and just.
Well, that
so
she's good at. Definitely cleaning the house. She was nonstop at times, but
right. She taught me how to clean a toilet the right way.
Oh, God. Jesus,
she did.
What the hell is that? My mom just liked to clean. That was just her. She liked to she just liked a spotless house, and that was great.
And I helped, and we did it together, and when I was there, I helped her out, and your mother is, she's in my heart.
She took in a lot. Like she let just life be at the house. I look back now at her and I go, God, man, she just let life, because we had so many people rotating when he was playing in our world. Right. And she just let it happen. So there was it was great. I mean, talk like a lot of freedom, but also know that keep an eye on everybody. And it just seemed to work, all the people that went in and out of that house and the lake and all that, that could go wrong, never went wrong.
No, it didn't. I mean, nobody got hurt. Everybody was,
right.
I mean, there were so many things that I remember that molded me today, basically, from living in your house and being with your family and having basically like brothers and sisters, that I never had because I am an only child, and I cherish these memories. Nothing will ever be the same for me.
Yeah, that was a special time, Vanna, and you were a big part of it. Vanna, you're awesome. So cool to talk to you. Everything good? Everything good today? I know you post the cicadas a lot. Very cool. And I miss that part of it. Every 17 years, we had that one year, and now you guys are going through that again.
It was so noisy, honestly, so noisy this year. Well, you saw, but and the kids are doing fine. And,
right.
Michael's going to he's in his 40s. My daughter's in her 30s, and I'm going to be 67, which kind of freaks me out because this was over 50 years ago with you guys.
I know.
Well, how old are you going to be now?
I'm 60. I am 60, and I got to tell you, I'm loving it.
And you've got Christy and
I got Christy and Moxie and Mito, but just overall, I just feel in a good place. So and what we're doing moving forward. So
I am so proud of you.
Well, thank you.
I am so proud of who you've become, and from that little boy that used to go run in the kitchen and take your sister's goldfish and run upstairs and feed them to your piranha. Yes, I am so proud of you. You're a good man, Jeff, and I love you to pieces.
Thank you, Vanna. When you have a brother like that, I don't know where, I must have got that from somewhere, but the piranha was hungry.
You have to laugh at that, okay?
I laughed at Linda Matarisi got me a couple of piranhas while my mom was out of town. That's laughable. I mean, All right. Oh, God, we could talk forever. All right, Vanna. I hope I see you sometime soon, okay?
Yes,
I love you.
I love you to pieces.
All right. Have a great day. Talk to you later.
Thanks for calling. Okay, bye-bye.
All right, you got it. Bye. Thanks again for listening to our show. Special thanks to our cool Cracker Jacks, Scott Nelson, Jim McCauley, Debbie Foley, Sherry Matarisi, Terry O'Brien, Gary Tallman, Anne Marie Pascule, Jim Muleschlegel, Liz Rutherford, and Mac McPhillamy.
This show is made possible because of all of them and all of our subscribers. If you want to support the show and be a cool Cracker Jack yourself, subscribe on our Patreon page.
Come on.
Click the link below this episode or go to the Patreon tab on our website, www.peanutspopcornandcrackerjacks.com.
And remember to click the follow button for the next episode. It's going to come 2 weeks down the road. And also leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Really appreciate that.
And don't hesitate to write. Give us suggestions. Tell us how you're liking the show. Email jeff.ppcpodcast@gmail.com.
For my closing quote, once you make a decision, the universe conspires to make it happen. Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Toodaloo.
SantoFilms.com has a new product out. It's called Peanuts, Popcorn, and Cracker Jacks t-shirt. All right, come and get it. It fits nice. I tried one on. Just great cotton feel. So, doesn't feel like one of those stiff t-shirts. I mean, it's one that you could even sleep in. It's that comfortable, let me tell you. And Christy, she tried on the female one. Oh, man, it fit well. It was great. And she said it was as comfortable as mine because she felt how mine was and I felt how hers was.
What are you saying?
I thought I could get through the commercial. I was ad-libbing and then...
Okay.
All right.
It's a great t-shirt. Go to SantaFilms.com.
SantaFilms.com. SantaFilms.com.
Thank you.